The medical bay of the Interstellar Research Station Harmony hummed with the soft blue glow of healing pods. But Dr. Marcus Chen barely noticed the familiar ambience as he tended to his latest patient. The being before him was unlike anything. In the galactic medical database is a crystalline entity from the recently discovered Zarian system. Its translucent body fractured in several places, emanating a weak pulsing light that seemed to dim with each passing moment. Another specimen for study, Director Voss had announced when the transport arrived. The Zarian delegation sent it after some sort of accident. Document everything, but don't waste too many resources on it. Marcus had nodded politely, but something about the way the being's light flickered almost like labored breathing made his chest tighten. While his colleagues saw a research opportunity, Marcus saw a patient in pain. The other medical staff had quickly lost interest when initial scans revealed the being's non-standard physiology. "It's not even responding to our standard treatments," Dr. Reeves had muttered before moving on to more familiar cases. Waste of time, if you ask me. But Marcus couldn't walk away. He'd spent the last 3 days running every diagnostic he could. Think of cross-referencing xenobiology texts, and even reaching out to contacts in distant systems. His persistence had earned him eye rolls from colleagues and a stern warning from Director Voss about misallocating resources. "You're too soft, Chen," Dr. Reeves had said that morning. "It's probably just some kind of mineral formation anyway. Not even truly alive." Marcus disagreed. The being's light patterns weren't random. They showed rhythm, variation, almost like a heartbeat. When he played soft music in the medical bay, the pulsing seemed to synchronize slightly. When he spoke gently while working, the light grew marginally brighter. As he adjusted the atmospheric composition around the being for the 100th time, Marcus noticed something new. The crystalline surface near what might have been a sensory organ had developed tiny fractal patterns, beautiful, intricate designs that seemed to shift and flow like living art. "Hello there," Marcus whispered, leaning closer. "I'm Marcus. I'm going to help you feel better." Light pulsed once brightly, and Marcus felt his heart skip. It was responding. Over the following hours, Marcus established a routine. He would arrive early, before the other staff, and spend time simply sitting with the being. He'd describe his work, talk about Earth, share stories about his childhood. The being's light would pulse in what seemed like recognition, and the fractal patterns would shift and dance. "The others think I'm wasting my time," Marcus admitted during one of these sessions. "Maybe they're right. I don't even know if you can understand me. But I can't just leave you here alone." As the being's entire form suddenly blazed with warm, golden light, and Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before, a gentle presence in his mind. Not invasive, but welcoming, like a hand extended. In friendship, gratitude, recognition, hope, the emotions weren't his own, but they filled him with wonder. This being was not only alive, but intelligent, perhaps more so than anyone had imagined, and it was trying to communicate. "You can understand me," Marcus breathed, reaching out to gently touch the crystalline surface. The being's light pulsed warmly at the contact, and Marcus felt a deep sense of connection. For the first time in days, Marcus smiled. He wasn't just treating a patient, he was making a friend. And somehow, he knew this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first felt the being's presence in his mind, and their communication had evolved into something beautiful and complex. The being who had somehow conveyed that its name was something like Cathara could now project simple emotions and concepts directly into Marcus's consciousness. The breakthrough had come when Marcus realized that Kithra's light patterns weren't just random responses, but a sophisticated language. Each color carried meaning. Each pulse conveyed emotion. And the fractal patterns that danced across its crystalline surface were actually words, or perhaps something even more nuanced than words. "Look at this," Marcus said excitedly to Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's xenolinguist, as he showed her his latest recordings. The blue spirals always appear when Cathara is asking questions. The golden waves seem to indicate happiness or agreement. In these purple fractals, they only show up when discussing complex, abstract concepts. Dr. Kim studied the data with growing amazement. "Marcus, this is incredible. You've documented what might be the most sophisticated nonverbal communication system we've ever encountered. How did you figure this out? Marcus smiled, glancing toward the medical bay where Cathara rested. I just listened, really listened. And I spent lots of time, just being present. What Marcus didn't mention was how the communication had become increasingly two-way. Cathara had begun sharing memories, not through words but through pure experience. Marcus had felt the joy of Kithara's homeworld, where crystalline beings like itself lived in vast, singing cities that resonated with harmonic frequencies. He'd experienced the pain of the accident that had damaged Cathara's light-generating organs, and the fear of being sent away from everything familiar. Your people, Marcus had asked during one of their sessions, are they looking for you? The response had been a complex mixture of emotions, longing, uncertainty, and something that felt like resignation. Through their growing connection, Marcus understood that Kithara's injuries had made it different, perhaps unable to fully participate in its society's light-based communication networks. You're not broken, Marcus had said firmly. You're just different, and different can be beautiful. The warm, golden pulse that followed had filled Marcus with such joy that he'd had to step away for a moment to compose himself. Dr. Kim's voice brought him back to the present. Marcus, you need to present this to the council. This could revolutionize how we approach first contact with non-humanoid species. But Marcus hesitated. He'd grown protective of Cathara, especially after overhearing Director Voss discussing the possibility of transferring the being to a more specialized facility. Don't know. Sarah, Cathara is still healing. The stress of being studied by dozens of researchers might set back its recovery. But think of the implications, Dr. Kim pressed. This could be the key to understanding an entire civilization. That evening, Marcus sat with Cathara in the quiet medical bay, watching the gentle play of light across its crystalline form. Everyone wants to study you, he said softly. They see you as a breakthrough, a discovery, but I see you as ... well, as a friend. Kithara's response was immediate and warm, a cascade of golden light that seemed to embrace Marcus's entire being. Aimed through their connection, he felt Kithara's own perspective, gratitude for being seen as an individual rather than a specimen, appreciation for Marcus's gentle care, and something deeper, a recognition of kinship between two beings who had both felt isolated and misunderstood. I won't let them treat you like just another research subject, Marcus promised. We'll figure this out together. The light patterns that followed were complex and beautiful, but Marcus didn't need to understand every nuance to feel their meaning. Trust, friendship, and perhaps most importantly, hope that understanding between different forms of life was not only possible, but could flourish when approached with patience, empathy, and genuine care. The breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday morning when Marcus arrived to find Cathara's crystalline form pulsing with urgent, rapid patterns of deep blue and silver light. The being's usual calm demeanor had been replaced by something that felt distinctly like excitement. What is it? Marcus asked, moving closer to the healing pod. Instead of the usual, gentle, emotional connection, Marcus suddenly found his mind flooded with images. It was not memories this time, but something more immediate. He saw the Harmony Station from an impossible perspective, as if viewing it through sensors he didn't possess. He saw energy patterns flowing through the station's systems, detected gravitational anomalies in nearby space, and somehow understood that a massive solar storm was approaching, one that the station's instruments hadn't yet detected. You can see it, can't you? Marcus breathed. The storm, your people, they must have natural abilities that let them perceive things we can't. Kithara's light pulsed affirmatively, and Marcus felt a surge of urgency. The being was trying to warn them. Marcus immediately contacted the station's chief engineer, Commander Torres. We need to run a full diagnostic on our solar storm detection systems. I have reason to believe we might have a massive storm incoming. Based on what data? Torres asked skeptically. Marcus hesitated. Trust me on this one, please. An hour later, Torres called back, his voice tight with concern. Marcus, I don't know how you knew, but we've got a Class 5 solar storm heading our way. Our early warning systems were malfunctioning. We've got maybe 6 hours to prepare. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity as the station prepared for the storm, and Marcus noticed something Troubling Kithora's light was growing dimmer, and the being seemed to be struggling with something internal. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, placing his hand gently on the crystalline surface. The response came as a flood of complex emotions and images. Kithora's people didn't just perceive energy patterns, they could influence them. The being was trying to help protect the station by creating a kind of energy buffer, but its damaged light-generating organs were making the effort extremely painful. "Stop," Marcus said firmly. "You'll hurt yourself." But Kithora's light pulsed with determination, and Marcus felt the being's resolve. It wanted to help, to contribute, to prove that it was more than just a patient to be cared for. "Let me help," Marcus said suddenly. "Show me what you need." What followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Kithora guided him through a process that was part meditation, part technical procedure, and part something entirely beyond human understanding. Marcus found himself serving as a kind of biological amplifier, his own bioelectric field somehow helping to stabilize Kithora's damaged systems. Together, they created a protective energy field around the station's most vulnerable systems. Marcus could feel the solar storm approaching like a wall of fire, but their combined efforts were holding it back, deflecting the worst of the radiation away from the station. When the storm finally passed, Marcus collapsed into a chair, exhausted, but exhilarated. Kithora's light had stabilized, brighter than it had been in weeks. "Did we just—" Marcus began. The response was pure joy, golden light that seemed to dance with celebration. But underneath, Marcus felt something deeper. Kithora had found a way to be useful, to contribute to the community that had taken it in. The being no longer felt like just a patient or a burden. Dr. Kim arrived an hour later, having heard about the storm and Marcus's mysterious early warning. "How did you know?" she asked. Marcus looked at Kithora, whose light pulsed with what he now recognized as amusement. "I had help from a friend," he said simply. "A friend who apparently saved the entire station," Dr. Kim observed. "Marcus, I think it's time we started treating our guest here as more than just a patient. Maybe it's time we started treating Kithora as a colleague." The warm golden pulse that followed filled the entire medical bay with light, and Marcus felt Kithora's deep satisfaction. Finally, the being was being seen not as a specimen or a patient, but as an individual with something valuable to contribute. The breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday morning when Marcus arrived to find Kithora's crystalline form pulsing with urgent, rapid patterns of deep blue and silver light. The being's usual calm demeanor had been replaced by something that felt distinctly like excitement. "What is it?" Marcus asked, moving closer to the healing pod. Instead of the usual, gentle, emotional connection, Marcus suddenly found his mind flooded with images. It was not memories this time, but something more immediate. He saw the Harmony Station from an impossible perspective, as if viewing it through sensors he didn't possess. He saw energy patterns flowing through the station's systems, detected gravitational anomalies in nearby space, and somehow understood that a massive solar storm was approaching, one that the station's instruments hadn't yet detected. "You can see it, can't you?" Marcus breathed. "The storm, your people, they must have natural abilities that let them perceive things we can't." Kithora's light pulsed affirmatively, and Marcus felt a surge of urgency. The being was trying to warn them. Marcus immediately contacted the station's chief engineer, Commander Torres. "We need to run a full diagnostic on our solar storm detection systems. I have reason to believe we might have a massive storm incoming." "Based on what data?" Torres asked skeptically. Marcus hesitated. "Trust me on this one, please." An hour later, Torres called back, his voice tight with concern. "Marcus, I don't know how you knew, but we've got a Class 5 solar storm heading our way. Our early warning systems were malfunctioning. We've got maybe 6 hours to prepare." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity as the station prepared for the storm, and Marcus noticed something. Troubling Kithora's light was growing dimmer, and the being seemed to be struggling with something internal. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, placing his hand gently on the crystalline surface. The response came as a flood of complex emotions and images. Kithora's people didn't just perceive energy patterns, they could influence them. The being was trying to help protect the station by creating a kind of energy buffer, but its damaged light-generating organs were making the effort extremely painful. "Stop," Marcus said firmly. "You'll hurt yourself." But Kithra's light pulsed with determination, and Marcus felt the being's resolve. It wanted to help, to contribute, to prove that it was more than just a patient to be cared for. "Let me help," Marcus said suddenly. "Show me what you need." What followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Kithara guided him through a process that was part meditation, part technical procedure, and part something entirely beyond human understanding. Marcus found himself serving as a kind of biological amplifier, his own bioelectric field somehow helping to stabilize Kithara's damaged systems. Together, they created a protective energy field around the station's most vulnerable systems. Marcus could feel the solar storm approaching like a wall of fire, but their combined efforts were holding it back, deflecting the worst of the radiation away from the station. When the storm finally passed, Marcus collapsed into a chair, exhausted, but exhilarated. Kithra's light had stabilized, brighter than it had been in weeks. "Did we just—" Marcus began. The response was pure joy, golden light that seemed to dance with celebration. But underneath, Marcus felt something deeper. Kithara had found a way to be useful, to contribute to the community that had taken it in. The being no longer felt like just a patient or a burden. Dr. Kim arrived an hour later, having heard about the storm and Marcus's mysterious early warning. "How did you know?" she asked. Marcus looked at Kithara, whose light pulsed with what he now recognized as amusement. "I had help from a friend," he said simply. "A friend who apparently saved the entire station," Dr. Kim observed. "Marcus, I think it's time we started treating our guest here as more than just a patient. Maybe it's time we started treating Kithara as a colleague." The warm golden pulse that followed filled the entire medical bay with light, and Marcus felt Kithra's deep satisfaction. Finally, the being was being seen not as a specimen or a patient, but as an individual with something valuable to contribute. Word of Kithara's contribution during the solar storm had spread throughout the station, and Marcus found himself fielding curious visitors and interview requests. But what surprised him most was how the other crew members' attitudes toward Kithara had begun to shift. Commander Torres was the first to visit, bringing with him a small device he'd been working on. "I've been thinking about what happened during the storm," he said, approaching Kithira's healing pod with newfound respect. "If you can perceive energy patterns the way Dr. Chen described, maybe you could help us optimize our power distribution systems." Kithra's light pulsed with interest, and Marcus felt the being's curiosity through their connection. "I can translate," Marcus offered, settling into his familiar role as intermediary. What followed was a fascinating collaboration. Kithara could indeed perceive inefficiencies in the station's energy grid that human instruments missed entirely. Through Marcus, the being suggested modifications that improved power efficiency by 12%, a significant improvement that would benefit the entire station. "This is remarkable," Torres said as they completed the modifications. "It's like having a living diagnostic tool. But more than that, Kithara understands the systems in a way that's almost intuitive." Over the following days, crew members began seeking Kithara's help with various technical challenges. Dr. Kim brought linguistic puzzles from other first contact scenarios. The hydroponics team asked for help optimizing their growing environments. Even the children in the station's education center began visiting. Drawn by the beautiful light patterns and the gentle presence they could somehow sense. But it was 8-year-old Emma Patterson who made the most significant discovery Emma had been born with a rare neurological condition that affected her ability to process sensory information. The constant bombardment of sights, sounds, and sensations often overwhelmed her, leading to episodes where she would withdraw completely from the world around her. "She's been having a particularly difficult week," her mother, Lieutenant Patterson, explained to Marcus. "Doctors on Earth suggested that exposure to new, gentle stimuli might help. I thought maybe, if it's okay with your friend." Marcus looked at Kithara, whose light immediately shifted to the soft, warm patterns he'd learned to associate with compassion and welcome. "I think Kithara would like to meet Emma." When Emma entered the medical bay, something extraordinary happened. Kithra's light immediately dimmed to a barely perceptible glow. and the being's usual complex fractal patterns simplified into gentle, flowing waves of soft blue and green dot. Emma, who typically shied away from new experiences, walked directly to Kithora's healing pod and placed her small hand on the crystalline surface. For the first time in weeks, her face relaxed into a peaceful expression. "It's quiet," Emma whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Inside my head, it's quiet." Marcus felt tears in his eyes as he realized what was happening. Kithora was somehow creating a calming field around Emma, filtering out the overwhelming sensory input that usually tormented her. "Can you understand her?" Marcus asked Kithora. The response came as a gentle wave of emotion recognition, empathy, and a deep understanding of what it meant to experience the world differently than others expected. Over the next hour, Emma sat peacefully beside Kithora, occasionally speaking in soft whispers about her favorite books or her drawings. Kithora responded with gentle pulses of light that seemed perfectly attuned to Emma's needs, never too bright, never too complex, always soothing. "Never seen her so calm," Lieutenant Patterson said, her voice thick with emotion. "How is this possible?" Marcus watched the interaction with growing amazement. "I think Kithora understands what it's like to be different, to process the world in ways that others don't always understand. Maybe that understanding creates a kind of ... resonance." When it was time for Emma to leave, she hugged Kithora's healing pod gently. "Thank you for making the noise stop," she said simply. Kithora's light pulsed once, warmly, and Marcus felt the being's deep satisfaction. This was more than just helping with technical problems. This was healing in its purest form. As Emma and her mother left, Marcus sat down beside Kithora. "You have a gift," he said softly. "Not just for seeing energy patterns or solving technical problems, but for understanding others, for helping them feel less alone." The response was a complex cascade of light that Marcus interpreted as humble gratitude, but underneath, he sensed something deeper, growing, sense of purpose and belonging that had been missing from Kithora's existence since the accident. The message from the Zarian delegation arrived 3 weeks after Emma's first visit, and Marcus felt his heart sink as he read the official communication. The crystalline beings people had finally responded to the Harmony Station's reports about Kithora's condition and recovery. "They're sending a medical ship," Director Voss announced during the morning briefing. "Apparently they have specialized treatments that could fully restore the being's light-generating capabilities. They'll be here in 2 weeks. Marcus should have felt relieved. This was what he'd been working toward, Kithora's complete recovery. But as he sat in the medical bay later that day, watching his friend's gentle light patterns, he felt only a deep sense of impending loss. "They're coming for you," Marcus said quietly. "Your people. They want to take you home and heal you properly." Kithora's light dimmed, and Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions through their connection, longing for home, gratitude for the care received, but also something that felt distinctly like reluctance. "You don't want to go," Marcus realized. The response came as a series of images and emotions that told a story Marcus hadn't fully understood before. Kithora's society was built around perfect harmonic communication, crystalline beings who could share thoughts and feelings instantaneously through their light patterns. But Kithora's injuries had disrupted this ability, making it an outsider in its own world. "Here, you're not broken," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "Here, you're just ... different. And different is valued." Over the following days, word of Kithora's impending departure spread throughout the station. And the response surprised everyone. Crew members who had initially shown little interest in the alien being now expressed genuine sadness at the thought of its leaving. Emma Patterson was the most affected. She had been visiting Kithora daily, and her condition had improved dramatically. The calming presence that Kithora provided had allowed her to engage with the world in ways her parents had never thought possible. "But who will help me make the noise stop?" Emma asked Marcus, her eyes filling with tears. Marcus knelt down to her level, struggling to find words. "Your friend has to go home, Emma. Their family is worried about them. But we're their family too," Emma said, with the simple clarity that only children possess. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Emma was right over the past months. Cathara had become more than just a patient or even a friend. The being had become part of their community, contributing in ways that went far beyond technical assistance. That evening, Marcus called a station-wide meeting. "I know this is unusual," he began, "but I think we need to discuss Kithra's situation. This being has contributed significantly to our community, and I believe we should have a say in what happens next." Commander Torres spoke first. "The efficiency improvements Cathara helped us implement will save the station thousands of credits annually. But more than that, working with them taught me to think about problems in entirely new ways." Dr. Kim nodded. "The linguistic insights we've gained from studying Cathara's communication methods have already improved our first contact protocols. This knowledge could help us communicate with dozens of other species." Lieutenant Patterson's voice was quiet but firm. "Cathara gave my daughter something I thought she'd never have: peace. The ability to exist comfortably in her own skin. It's not something you can put a price on." One by one, crew members shared their experiences with Cathara. The being hadn't just been a patient or a research subject, it had been a teacher, a helper, a friend. It had made their community stronger, more inclusive, more understanding. "So what are you suggesting?" Director Voss asked. Marcus took a deep breath. "I'm suggesting we give Cathara a choice, a real choice. Not just between going home or staying, but between two different kinds of belonging." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus was proposing something unprecedented, offering an alien being permanent residency, citizenship even, in their human community. "The Zarian delegation won't like it," Director Voss warned.
"Alvin."
"We'll have to convince them," Marcus replied. "We'll have to show them that Cathara isn't just surviving here, it's thriving. And that sometimes family isn't about who you're born to, but about who chooses to stand by you when you need them most." As the meeting dispersed, Marcus returned to the medical bay, where Kithra's light pulsed with curious inquiry. The being had sensed the emotional intensity of the gathering, but hadn't understood the specifics. "We're going to fight for you," Marcus said simply. "If you want to stay, we're going to make sure you can." The response was immediate, an overwhelming cascade of golden light that filled the entire medical bay, accompanied by emotions so intense that Marcus had to steady himself against the wall. Joy, gratitude, love, and above all, a deep sense of finally truly belonging. The medical bay fell silent as Kithra's light dimmed to barely a whisper. The being clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the choice before it, Marcus felt the turmoil through their connection waves of longing for home mixed with deep attachment to the community that had embraced its differences. "Take your time, Marcus," said softly, placing his hand on the crystalline surface. "Whatever you decide, we'll support you." For long minutes, Kithra's light flickered with indecision. Then, slowly, the patterns began to shift and flow in ways Marcus had never seen before. The being was communicating simultaneously in both human comprehensible emotions and the complex harmonic language of its own people through their connection. Marcus felt Kithra's message: "I am grateful for the healing you offer, but I have already been healed. Not in the way you expected, but in the way I needed most." Zephyros's light patterns shifted to what the translator rendered as surprise. "You choose to remain damaged?" Kithra's response blazed through the room with such intensity that even the human crew members could sense its meaning. "I choose to remain myself." The being's light patterns became a cascade of memories. The loneliness of being unable to fully participate in the collective's harmonic networks. The joy of discovering new ways to communicate, the satisfaction of helping others, the deep sense of belonging that had grown within the Harmony Station's diverse community. "I understand now, Harmonies," Christos said quietly. "You have not been damaged, you have been transformed. And transforming, you have transformed others." Emma Patterson stepped forward, her small hand still resting on Kithra's healing pod. "Does this mean you're staying?" Kithra's response was pure joy golden light that seemed to embrace everyone in the room. But there was more to the communication, something directed specifically at the Zarian delegates. "What is it saying?" Marcus asked. Zephyros translated his own light patterns, now warm with understanding. "It asks if we might learn from this place. from these people who see difference as strength rather than weakness. It suggests that perhaps the collective could benefit from broader perspectives. Over the following hours, something unprecedented unfolded. Zarian delegates began to truly observe the Harmony Station's community. Seeing how beings of different species, different abilities, different perspectives work together to create something stronger than any individual could achieve alone. They watched Emma Patterson play games with Cathara. Her neurological differences no longer a barrier, but simply another way of experiencing the world. They observed Commander Torres, collaborating with Cathara on engineering problems, each bringing unique insights that neither could have achieved alone. They saw Dr. Kim working with Cathara to develop new communication protocols that could help future first contact situations. Your community is unusual, Zephyros admitted to Marcus as they watched Cathara help a group of children with their science projects. We have always believed that harmony comes from similarity, from perfect synchronization. But what you have created here suggests that harmony can also emerge from diversity. Different notes can create beautiful music, Marcus replied. Sometimes. The most beautiful music. By the end of the week, the Zarian delegates had made their own unprecedented decision. Rather than simply retrieving Cathara, they requested permission to establish a cultural exchange program. Some young Zarian beings would come to study at the Harmony Station, while human researchers would visit the Zarian homeworld to learn about their harmonic technologies. You have taught us something valuable, Harmonious Christos told the assembled crew, that healing sometimes means not restoring what was lost, but discovering what can be gained. As the residents prepared to depart, now carrying volunteers for the exchange program rather than a reluctant patient, Marcus sat with Cathara in the quiet medical bay. No regrets? Kithra's response filled the room with warm golden light, a pattern that Marcus had learned to recognize as the being's way of expressing perfect contentment. Through their connection, he felt Cathara's deep satisfaction with the choice it had made. I never thought I'd say this about a medical case, Marcus admitted, but you've taught me more about healing than all my years of training. You've shown me that sometimes the greatest healing comes not from fixing what's broken, but from helping someone discover they were never broken at all. Emma Patterson appeared in the doorway, carrying a drawing she'd made of Cathara surrounded by all the friends they'd made on the station. I made this for you, she said, holding up the picture. Kithra's light pulsed with joy as it accepted the gift. And Marcus felt the being's deep gratitude, not just for the drawing, but for everything it represented. A home where differences were celebrated, where healing came in many forms, and where the greatest strength came from the simple act of caring for one another. Outside the medical bay, the Harmony Station continued its mission among the stars. But now it carried something even more precious than scientific knowledge, proof that understanding, acceptance, and love could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and create families that transcended the boundaries of species, biology, or expectation. In the gentle glow of Kithra's light, Keitha smiled, knowing that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from looking outward to the stars, but from looking inward to the infinite capacity for compassion that connected all living beings across the universe.